Welcome to another episode of the Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your guest, Joe Konopacki, and with me, as always, is your hosts, Tom and Mark.
It was so much louder than the last one. We're accepting that.
Yeah. His deep breath beforehand was louder than the actual shout. So
Great radio voice though.
Yeah.
Joe can join us on the podcast here.
Yep.
So, man, we cover a lot here that because a lot of times people only look at the bottom line, they don't see like the direct impact of like some of these failures in their buildings, but like it has a real impact on your building.
Yeah, the whole as far as air going out or coming in your first floor when it goes out the top floor, like I never really thought about it that way. But man, that the science makes so much sense, and it's really what we talked about a lot here today.
Yeah, well, I've noticed even because we have a lot of things that we have completely gutted and are brand new, and I have a lot of buildings I've taken over where you do a cosmetic rehab, but it's not. You have tenants in there, you can't totally gut it, and you can tell the difference. Like just even walking in there, you forget the cosmetic, just the feel of everything and just how bunged up it is. So I know we ran long, so let's jump right into it. What's our housing provider tip of the week? All right, it's good stuff. Who's our guest?
All right, so man, we broke down science today. U of I graduate, DuPage local here as well too. But he is a real estate investor and he works directly within the real estate field. So without further ado, Joe Konopacki from Insight Property Services. Welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
Man,
Appreciate being here.
Yeah, I'm happy. Jamie from Wheaton Chamber of Commerce made the introduction.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jamie and Wheaton. But another U of I graduate. It kind of amazes me how
awesome we are.
well that I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But the level of success that comes out of U of I that translates into the Chicago real estate world, like maybe I feel like it's a disproportionate amount of people that are on the show that are from U of I. Maybe you do that. I don't know.
It's a giant school, and like it's not as like crazy standards, but it's got decent standards, I would say, and it's the biggest state school we have, right? Like I don't know, makes sense to me.
I don't know.
And then people, from U of I, they're like, what market am I going to work in? Chicagoland, right? Because there's going to be, whatever you do, there's going to be more of it going on in Chicago than anywhere else. So you go to school at U of I, but you generally don't stay and live there.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah, you're the weirdo, not us.
I'm not saying I'm not. I think it's cool or whatever. I was starting thinking like, do I push my
Getting
kids?
defensive.
Do I push my son to go to U of I? Like that's what I was thinking. So
I'll say
it's
right now,
cool.
I would not get into U of I today. It's a way better school now.
That's what
I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah, like I was borderline at the time. There's no chance I'm getting in today.
Awesome. So, Joe, let's start back from the beginning. Kind of, you went to U of I. What'd you major in? You found yourself into real estate. Kind of give us the high level story there.
Went to U of I out of high school when I went and got an engineering degree. At the time, I was thinking I was going to go like patent law or something like that. That didn't pan out. Got my engineering degree, and my family has had properties. I mean, my dad raised 8 kids on a union wood finisher salary, only because we lived in a 3-flat and he bought like a 12-unit apartment, building, and we did all the maintenance on that stuff. I mean, all of it. I mean, we were crawling through crawl spaces to bleed water out of hydronic systems and stuff like that. And so that's kind of where things got started. And the majority of my brothers and sisters, their first property was a rental property. Live in one, rent out the other, and then sometimes they sold it off altogether. Sometimes they kept it as a investment property as they would buy their single family home, and that's kind of the path that I followed. So I helped manage the apartments. My brother actually got into it. My oldest brother, he's got numerous properties. He got his start out in DeKalb, and when he was consolidating things in the Chicagoland area, he said, "Hey, you've been managing these places in DeKalb. You want to just buy them from me?" And so that allowed him to do a 1031 exchange into something, and that got my first ownership. All right, so nice, kind of easy transition. I was familiar with managing the properties, and so ownership seemed to be a good next step.
Student housing?
Just off campus.
Okay.
So we'd get grad students or townies, sorry, local folks, yeah. So
We
that
can't get canceled for townies, right?
Yeah.
We're not there yet, right?
Sorry, townies. Don't take offense. So those are my first couple properties, and then we bought our first single family home. And when we outgrew that place, I kept that as a rental property. I've since sold off the stuff in DeKalb, 1031 exchange into the building that we bought last April. So that we sold off 2 properties that had 5 units among them, and we bought 1 property that had 6 one-bedroom apartments and 1 commercial space, and it's a block from the house.
So Wheaton, or was that
It's in Lyle.
Lyle?
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, and so the commute is awesome.
Yeah.
It's far enough away that work is separate from house, right? Because we moved we had our office for our consulting business in Lyle, but with COVID happening, and we ended up getting out of that, moved the show back into the home office. That doesn't work out very well for very long, and so we were kind of itching to get into an office space, and I didn't want to lease something, so I was like, all right, well let's divest ourselves of DeKalb. We weren't looking at trying to build a position in DeKalb just because it's not in our backyard, right? And so you're looking at an hour and a half travel for us, just to go there, unlock a door, and come back, or to sign a lease or anything like that. So, it was good to sell those to somebody else and invest in something that's a block away that gives us the commercial space we need for our business, and more than replace the rental units that we sold out in DeKalb.
You're in the DeKalb market for a while. We did a whole episode
Mm-hmm.
last year on DeKalb. What was your opinion of the market for investors there? What did you learn?
I'm probably not the best person to give that, because I literally would get into town, manage what I needed to manage, and I kind of got back out. So I wasn't able to spend any time networking in the area or getting a good feel. So I had a really small perspective on that market, which is part of the reason why I was like, I don't have the time or proximity to, or desire really, to grow my holdings there. So a very limited perspective of what was going on there. I know the success of that town really did hinge on how well the university was doing, right? So the university was like, that was the anchor element in that, or that is the anchor element in there. And so if attendance goes down, then all the ancillary things that go along with that kind of drop off. And again, I had a real small position there, so it was just like, I'm doing what I need to do to make these properties still cash flow for me, and they were good, right? So I'm not complaining about that. That was it really did help us, it was a good base of our real estate portfolio when we got started out.
You in the building you have in Lyle, you have that's where your office is.
Yes, sir.
Is there any advantage as far as financing or anything you're able to take advantage of as far as having your office inside of a property?
It was the reason why that property was still available, right? The desire was to take that 6 unit and gut that commercial space and put 2 more units in there. But Lyle years ago had passed an ordinance, no residential properties on Ogden Avenue. And if you did, you had to get a variance, right? And so of course we were like, you just put my building into violation. They're like, well, come get a variance. And when they would issue the variance, it was like, okay, you have pre-existing, rental units. You can keep those, right? You can transition them to commercial if you want, but you cannot have any fewer, or you can't add any more. Sorry, you can't add any more. So anybody who was apparently it was listed for a good long while, over a year, and everybody that looked at it was just like, that commercial space is not an asset to me, right? And what made it possible for us to purchase was the fact that I'm like, I have a tenant for that space.
Yeah. Me.
We can sign a lease for that space. Yeah. My other business is going to pay rent, which makes my real estate holding business, we can show that like, hey, we can cover this mortgage because we're coming in with a tenant for that space.
Nice.
Right. And so that's what made it possible because, there's other properties up and down that street, but they're commercial properties that touch and go, or it's not the best environment right now or best time in the market for, holding real commercial, rental properties.
Yep. I want to go back to growing up in a real estate family.
Sure.
So you said most of your siblings also got involved. Did your dad sit down and explicitly talk about the benefits of, or was it just more you just saw him working? Like, all right, well, this worked for him. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, my dad probably talked with my older brothers and a little bit more about it. My older brother, again, he saw the wisdom in rental properties. That's how he makes his money. I mean, he started out as an appraiser and then got into the purchasing rental properties and then multi-units and on, right? And so that was always and for a while when I was between college and such, he was always like, hey, I need somebody to help me with this, right? And at some point I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing that as well, but for myself. Sometimes it's a little tough to work for family. My dad's like, how come you're not working with Tony anymore? Turns out you work for Tony. It's hard to work with Tony. So as a brother, he's awesome, right? As employer, things got a little tense. So we have a good relationship. But he made the real estate rental property hit the core of what he did. My sister had a multi-unit that she lived in before they bought their house. One of my older brothers, I think there's one brother who didn't ever bother with rental properties. Single family home, had a job, and he's like, I'm good. Yeah, otherwise all the rest of us had, some multi-unit, one building, two buildings, something like that.
So
crazy.
Your brother was an appraiser, which is real estate adjacent. You, we'll talk about today what you do and how that's very real estate adjacent. Talk to us about how your kind of career unfolded to where you're at today.
It was, I left college unimpressively and kind of vagabonded around for a while and worked, salmon fishing up in Alaska.
No way.
Ended up joining the Marines as an officer candidate. Got a pretty significant case of heat stroke while I was there. Apparently, I hold high score. The highest temperature recorded, not held posthumously. So that last part's key.
Congrats.
That last part is key. Hey, you rang the bell and you didn't die. 108.2.
Wow.
So they're like, hey, we're going to go play in the desert. So you got to go find something else to do. And so came back. And my, again, my brother was always, there's always a ton of stuff to do with the property. So when that didn't pan out, I started working for him again to help kind of manage all those properties. And then we kind of split off. I started doing my own thing. And it was after, so I was doing rehabs and remodels, managing my own properties, rehabbing bathrooms and, I didn't do any addition building, but it was always just kind of inside the existing building shell, making modifications.
And to end users, like a retail client calling you up saying, hey, I want a new kitchen.
Yeah. To homeowners. And it was all referral based. It was kind of I wasn't advertising the business. It was just kind of, I had my rental properties, bringing in income. My wife had a good job. I was kind of taking over some childcare stuff. So having a flexible schedule, was worked well. And then I would do electrical job for somebody, or I would do, a bathroom remodel or whatever. So I had working with my dad and working with my brother, and a couple other guys that had real estate. My brother worked for a big developer in DeKalb, and so which meant I worked for the developer in DeKalb for a while there. And I'd spend summers with my brother in DeKalb, working for the developer during the day, and then rehabbing my brother's stuff in the evenings, right? And so new construction to 1870 house, construction rehab, right? So I saw everything from knob and tube wiring to, electrical conduit and all the rest of that stuff, So I got a pretty good range of experience through over the years. And so when my brother and I kind of parted ways. At some point, my college friends started calling me up and saying, "Hey, buying a house. You were our house manager. Can you do the inspection for me?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not a licensed inspector." "All right, well then just come over here and just translate for me, or call BS if necessary. But I just want somebody knowledgeable on my side." "All right, fine." You know, and after watching a couple of these home inspections, I'm like, I could do this, right? So got license, or went through home inspector training, got my license, and started doing that as another stream of income. Still doing rehabs, still doing remodel work. Started doing home inspections. My cousin got into properties in Wisconsin, so I was up there for a couple days a week, basically helping and consulting. Helping him do the rehabs and such, helping his wife figure out how to rent the apartments and stuff, doing the admin side of things. So I kind of consulted to them as they were getting their started building their empire, and then so got into the home inspection thing, and was like, it'll just be another thing that I can do, and I'll be a better property owner having gone through home inspector training. And I mean, it's broad, right? Because you have to look. Somebody's buying a house. You're in 2 to 3 hours. You're required to look at everything in that house. At least, you're at least touching it, right? You're not looking very deep, but you're looking at everything wide. And so somebody's like, "Why is that furnace doing what it's doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. It needs attention. I got 198 other things to look at in about 2 hours 45 minutes. So I can't dwell on that." But it did uncover those areas of properties that I was weak on technically, right? So I needed to bone up my skills on electrical and those kind of things. But it gave me a nice broad perspective, and I was nailing my home inspector instructor with a bunch of questions because I had such a background of dealing with properties and problems and leaks and moisture issues and odors and the bajillion things that come up when you own a property. And my home inspector instructor is like, "Dude, you're not doing this stuff on a 3-hour inspection." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm doing it on the properties that I'm responsible for and that I help other people with." And so he's like, "Well, then you need to go into building science." I'm like, "What?" Heat flow, airflow, moisture flow, system interactions, right? And so I'm like, never heard of that before. And so right after my home inspector training, I went into the building science training. And so there's generally 2 paths. There's Building Performance Institute, which standard setting body for how do you evaluate an existing property, figure out where its opportunities for improvement are, and improve the overall performance of it, right? And then there's ResNet, which is more around Energy Star new construction homes. There's a fair amount of overlap, and there are aspects of energy modeling that you would do for existing homes, like energy efficient mortgages, which, oh my gosh, if that could be a thing in the Chicagoland area, it'd be awesome. You're effectively you go to buy a house, you can have somebody do the evaluation on the house, identify areas of improvement, implement those improvements, have those improvement costs baked into the mortgage, and then you take possession of the building with the air sealing and the insulating and the other performance upgrades done while the house is still empty, and you just move into a house that's done, right? And all of that gets rolled into your 30-year mortgage. And I have friends in other parts of the country that are like, "Oh yeah, in the Carolinas, we're knocking 6 of those out a week." You're like, "That's crazy." And in Chicago, once a year, somebody knocks on my door, goes, "I want to do an energy efficient mortgage." I'm like, "All right, hopefully your lender's on board." And then inevitably somebody drops the ball, it falls apart, and then they have to get conventional loans. And then they move in only to find out that they've got comfort, efficiency, other issues in the house that, could have been done and implemented and rolled into that 30-year mortgage. So, two pathways: existing properties versus new construction stuff. I eventually got certified in both, but for the existing properties, not only did I get certified to do evaluations on those properties, but we became trainers. So we train contractors to do those evaluations for like the utility incentive programs. So if you got a single family home, it's drafty, poorly insulated, high utility bills, furnace won't shut off, can't keep temperature, moisture issues, you can reach out to the ComEd, NICOR, gas, utility cert programs. They'll send out assessors, they'll do the work. We do those assessments as our company, we do that in a market rate. So we're not working with the low income programs. We do the training for all the contractors that do all that work, right? The consulting that we do is the oddball stuff, the big stuff, the the market rate work. So you got a 13,000 square foot house that you need figured out. We're your guys, right? And so even HVAC guys will refer us out because they're like, you got a ton of stuff going on. So the contractors are generally good at fixing stuff. We're good at figuring stuff out,
Yep.
right?
So real quick, I've been exposed to Franklin Energy here in Chicago. So is that now on bigger buildings, they'll come in, they'll do the blown insulation for free. They'll wrap your pipes. They'll give you rebates on your hot water tank
So
purchases.
they're working for the utilities.
Yep.
They're managing that. So the utilities are obligated to reinvest in energy efficiency of buildings.
And they're like the sub under ComEd or whatever.
Yeah. And they're not even the contractors. They're managing the contractors that are doing that. So
Yeah, that contractor's getting free work basically, right? Because
they basically say, here's this work. Like
Yes.
so if you're part of the network as a trade ally, it becomes a stream of work that those contractors can get. But there's a requirement that they are certified to do that work effectively. It's not just about showing up with bales of insulation and dropping them on site and getting that. Like the building has to be measurably better as a result of your efforts, right?
Yes, so I ran into that because I had a building that was usually I buy like a terrible building and I gut it and spend a ton of money. I bought a building that was in okay shape and I was like, oh, this might qualify. And like, no, it's too, like I already had
too
insulation in the attic. Like, so like it wasn't crappy enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, you're like, if we got money to reduce energy use in buildings, where are we going to biggest bang for the buck? How about the worst performing buildings that are out there? And that tends to be those that had, no upgrades, in the last handful of years, or just been,
40-year owner who
low
passed
income
away.
homes that, where the folks can't afford to do some of that stuff. And so it just gets away from them and they're looking at $600 a month, gas or electric bills, and so that's where all the efforts go is, stemming the tide on just the worst energy users or the biggest energy users there. And so your building was not shitty enough.
Yep.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah. So for our listeners though, like if you have questions on that, these are for bigger multifamily. Marlene Levy's over there, great friend of the show and from the MBOA. So reach out on that. All right. So let's say we have a lot of our listeners who buy like 2 to 4 unit buildings and they'll live in, the brick, picture that standard brick 2 unit in Chicago. They'll live in 1 unit. What are like probably what are the low hanging fruits? You as like the scientist walking into those. I know every building's different. You walk into that. What are some of the low hanging fruit of like, all right, like these are easy ways to improve your building?
Obviously those draft areas, air leakage is one of the big things. That was like the eye opener for me going through the building science training, was how uncontrolled airflow causes all kinds of grief, right? It can effectively turn your fiberglass insulated walls into filtered walls. Guess what the R value of a filter is?
Not much.
0, right? And so effectively you're like, hey, I installed all this insulation. I'm like, you installed a bunch of air filter because you didn't seal around it. And so because your insulation doesn't work, then now we're putting more load on the heating equipment, right? The heating equipment has distribution and forced air, right? And if the forced air ducts leak, well, then you're not delivering the conditioned air to those areas of the building that you need to. So duct leakage and building leakage is those are the 2 main things that we find deficient in just about every property. Now, what parts of the building enclosure are drafty? What parts of the ductwork? That's this kind of stuff that we help people figure out. Should I do this one first or the other one first? So we help, again, discover what the issues are and then prioritize that in some logical, cost-effective way. But logistics is a big deal too, right? Because you're like, hey, if somebody's going to be messing around in the attic, what other stuff should be done in the attic before we go bury things in 16 inches of insulation? Because who's going to want to go up and play a gerbil, and go digging around through that stuff after the fact? You're like, no. So again, there's a sequence of things that logistically make sense. Like, let's presume you can afford to do it all. And now we're just trying to figure out which it makes sense to bring in which contractors in which order, right? And so having, managed jobs, on properties, that's one of the big valuable insights that we bring to folks, going, anybody can do cost effective, do the numbers on this and do the numbers on that. But we also bring the insight of how does it best make sense? I want to bring the fewest contractors in, the fewest number of times, in the most rational order, right? And so, we bring that part to it.
Take it back to the drafty scenario you laid out. Why should people like care about this? Because so a lot of people hear this and they think, I've got $15-20 more on my gas bill. I'd rather not deal with this, or I'd rather not invest in this. Like, paint the bigger picture of why some of these are important.
So you're looking at a multi-unit, so say like a 3 flat, right? Individual upstairs doesn't have individual heating controls because it's on the main floor or whatever. You get something dumb like that. Or they just, I like to have fresh air, and so they open up their windows. And so all that warm, humid air that migrates up to the upper floor leaves that window, right? If the building was flexible, you would see it, basically all the air would kind of get sucked out of it and it would collapse. But building is rigid, so anything that leaves out the top as far as air volume is going to be sucked into the bottom of the building, right? So I get 50 cubic feet of air movement leaving a window or a fan, an equal amount of air gets sucked in. Cold air gets sucked into the bottom, warm air leaves out the top, all winter long, right? And the taller the building is, that stronger that stack effect is. In fact, it's that stack effect on multi-unit buildings, multi-story buildings, that required the development of a revolving entry door on buildings. It's a human-sized air valve. They couldn't keep a hinge door either closed or open because of the suction pressure that would be created at the bottom of a multi-story building. On a residential structure, the magnitude is less, but the dynamic is still there. Cold air drafts in at the bottom as a result of the warm air leaving the top. So all the contractors, who come in and resolve these issues of buildings know that the main focus of their efforts is going to be corking the top, right? Just like milk in a straw. If I stick my thumb on top of the straw, the milk doesn't go anywhere. If it's open straw, then things start flowing, right? And so, but in this case, it's warm, humid air leaving the top, resulting in drafts. So my upper floor tenants, and we did this before I even understood the building science of it, my brother in his place, we would say, hey, it's wintertime, close your windows. If your windows are open, first thing we're going to do is look for a heat call. If there's no heat call and you just got your windows open, we're going to give you a warning. We're going to give you a fine, and because your open window creates drafts for your first floor neighbors, right? And so so why do you care? If the people on the first floor are griping about things being cold all winter long and cold air infiltration, that's your frozen pipes. Every frozen pipe that we've ever come across, ever, is an air draft issue, right? You can have a pipe on the inside of a cinder block wall. If there's no drafts on it, the copper is very conductive. It'll keep itself from freezing. But you put a draft on that pipe, we had hot water, like 120-degree radiator water, baseboard radiator water, moving through a pipe, and that thing froze solid and burst. And I was, back in the day, I was in somebody's living room. They're opening up Christmas gifts. This is Christmas morning. Somebody left the back door propped open, and that draft froze a pipe, right? So why do we care about airflow? Because frozen pipes. Anybody who's dealt with frozen pipes, it's an airflow issue. We've had frozen pipe when we had polar vortex a couple of years ago. We had somebody had a frozen pipe in a residential home 12 feet into the house. And they're like, how's a pipe freeze 12 feet in? I'm like, because there was an air draft that was coming in like a little overhang offset in the house. It was coming through the floor joist where it intersected the water pipes going to the second floor bathroom. And it was like, are you telling me a draft went 12 feet and it was cold enough to freeze a pipe? I'm like, that's it. Crazy stuff. But again, the airflow issue, it affects combustion safety, air quality in homes, comfort, humidity. This past summer, we had all kinds of humidity being sucked into houses and condensing on people's ductwork. We had all kinds of calls. I got moisture dripping off of this, that, and the other thing all August and into September, right? And that's an air leakage thing, right?
Yep. So when you take one of these 2-unit, 3-unit brick buildings, what are you looking for? Like, what are some of the common mistakes? Like when you're in the basement, you see like, is it little cracks in the foundation? Is it, just a little between the masonry and the window or the lintel? Like, are those like the biggest entry points?
All of it. Like, contractors ask me like, hey, we're not dealing with an entire house. We're just dealing with sections, right? So I'm putting in a skylight, or I'm just, venting this dryer to the outside or whatever. Like, and I said, there's no good reason to leave anything drafty. Right? So I got metal pipe going out a brick wall, caulk it, seal it, foam it, right? I'm putting in a skylight, caulk the drywall tunnel to the skylight that you just put in. Well, nobody can see that. I'm like, you're not caulking it for aesthetics. You're caulking it to stop the air that is going to rise up and condense on cold roof surfaces and drip back down, right? So again, anytime you're messing with a building, anytime drywall is open, if wood touches metal, if or any where two pieces of differing materials come together, caulk it, seal it, foam it, put backer rod in there. Don't put it back together drafty. Seal the holes, right? If somebody could just do that, I think they'd appreciate, that would be a good use of their efforts, especially before drywall goes up. Drywall, that's the biggest thing that hinders us is access. So as soon as the finishes are up, like now things just got more expensive and nobody wants to tear something down that they just put up. So our big thing is call us before you start a project or call us before the drywall goes up, right? Because I don't want to give people bad news. Here's what you could have done. I'd rather tell you what you should do or could do, not should have done.
Yep. All right. You mentioned gas force air before. I want to get your opinion as the scientist here on boilers. Because a lot of these old buildings will have, whether it's single pipe steam or a hydraulic, you probably see these all the time. Mm-hmm. Are these, can they still be run very efficiently, even if they're heating the whole building? And what are some of the tips to maybe make sure that that's happening?
So the building enclosure and the heating systems dance, right? If I've got a cardboard box of a building enclosure, drafty, poorly insulated, I need a crazy output heating system, right? But if I've got a building enclosure that is airtight, insulated, cooler, of a building, then I need minimal heating, cooling inside. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's why you'd never want to scrimp on the building enclosure. The building enclosure will save you money on operating costs, right? And your insulation and air sealing doesn't wear out. You don't have to feed it electricity or gas. You don't have to service it every year, right? I mean, obviously, we don't want things getting wet and causing other problems, but that building enclosure will pay you over and over and over, right? And they may amortize it over 20 or 30 years, but insulation doesn't like disappear and have to be reinstalled completely 30 years later, right? I know we have to throw a number at it like, oh, this will be a 30-year life. But effectively, you air seal and insulate properly, you shouldn't have to do that again, right? And that means now my heating systems could be smaller, right? And smaller systems tend to be a little bit more modular. Their output could be modulated easier than big systems. Big systems deliver heat by the bucket, right? So your boilers, you got 2 million BTU steam boiler down there, and we're like, we want to go with heat pumps. I'm like, good God, man. It's like saying I eat 12,000 calories a day and I want to be a vegan. Like, you're going to be chewing all day long, dude. Right?
It's a great analogy.
Right? Come on, man. If you want to be a vegan, bring it down to 2,000 calories a day. Let's do something reasonable here. But if your building is just an energy hog, there's no better way to deliver heat energy to a building than natural gas, period, right? You're generating the heat where you need it. You're not, because you know what the biggest purchaser of natural gas is? It's the electrical utilities. So they're purchasing gas to make steam, to run turbines, to make electricity. They make 4 kilowatts of electricity. You get 1 at the house because that's how much is lost in the lines. Then you're taking that 1 kilowatt of electricity and then you're trying to turn that into heat, right? And if it's electric resistance toaster coils, now your unit's $600 a month, for heating, right? Or you can do a heat pump, right? And that's 3 or 4 times more efficient. So better. But when things get super cold and the heat pumps start to poop out because it's too cold outside and they have to kick over to electric resistance and everybody else's units kicking over to electrical resistance, all of a sudden your demand for electricity when it's super cold increases by 3 or 4 times because now your toaster coil backup has to kick in, right? That's going to pop, transformers at the pole, right? And so you want your gas. You want your gas as your backup. Right? Because a gas boiler can deliver heat by the bucket when you need it, when it's crazy cold outside, right? And so our recommendation to folks is don't get rid of grandpa boiler, right? That guy can, here, let me show you how it's done. I'll show you how to heat this place up. You're like, fantastic. But when it's 50 degrees outside or 55 degrees, it doesn't know how to give just a little bit of heat to the units because it delivers heat by the bucket. And I need a cup or a pail. And so if I had a heat pump system that can deal with moderate loads, that can then tag in the boiler and say, hey, boiler, I need you to come. I can't, I'm out of my performance zone, right? And that could be temperature outside. That could be cost of electricity versus gas. So that crossover point can vary. But let's say it's somewhere around 30 degrees, 32 degrees. That's when you go, hey, I need a lot of heat. And guess what? Gas can deliver a lot of heat effectively and cheaply to a building. So I don't want one or the other. I kind of want both, right? And I've seen boilers that are like 40 years, 45 years old. And they're not efficient, but they are effective, right? And they're most efficient when they're kicking out 100% of what they got. And that's best done when it's stupid cold outside and you need 100% of what they got. So literally you go, I can operate this boiler in the winter time when it's at its peak efficiency. And then I can have a heat pump system that can run during moderate loads when they work best, and gas or electric, right? And so actually that's a thing that the utilities, especially the gas utilities are pushing now, is micro combined heat and power, where you actually have a gas unit that can create electricity and hot water heat. And that hot water heat can be transferred to the radiators, or it can be a coil for a forced air system, right? But effectively, like if the electric grid goes down, some tree hits a power line, your gas unit that heats your building could also create enough electricity to keep fridges going and kind of have, it's like a backup generator that also does heating in the building. So it's combined heat and power or micro combined heat and power units. So there's a lot of cool tech coming out.
That all makes sense, right? And I understand why that'd be the most efficient, but that is not economical, right? Because now you're paying for the boiler, you still have the gas bill on you, you have the heat pumps as well. Like, do people actually do this in practice? Because I hear this and I'm like, all right, I've looked in the heat pumps, and like it's almost the same as just putting in individualized HVAC and the ductwork. Like the pricing's probably around the same, and from at least in Chicago here, I know there's more HVAC techs than there are. If I have an issue with the heat pump, right? Because it's newer. Like there's not as many people out there.
Yep.
So when I've looked into this situation, I've been like, all right, I either got to stay with the boiler or transition to HVAC. Like, do you see people do what you described? Makes perfect sense. But have you seen people actually do that? Because that's super costly.
So the people that are kind of hitting us first are the ones that want to decarbonize. They want to effectively remove the gas meter from the building, right? Those are the people leading the charge, right? I want to put a heat pump in here because it runs on electricity and not gas. But then you look at it, I have to, I'm turd in the punch bowl, I guess, because I'm like, what you want to do is physically either impossible, or it's going to be costly, or there's going to be other ramifications, to make that shift, considering what else you got going on in the building, right? You need a certain amount of BTUs delivered to this house. And for a heat pump to do that, there's an air source heat pump, which is basically an air conditioner that can run in reverse, right? It absorbs heat from outside air and can concentrate it and put it in the house. There's geothermal or ground source heat pumps where they actually drill wells down into the ground. And we know folks that do that on a residential and commercial basis. And that is more, it's independent of outside temperature because it's exchanging to the earth, and that's constant 55 degrees around here. But there's literally sunk cost in drilling those wells, right? So again, it's not cheap, right? So who's doing it? The folks that are intent, that again, true believers that go, I want to decarbonize. I want to be an all electric building. I want to put solar panels on the top. Maybe they'll have battery backup. Those are obviously the early adopters, right? Fantastic. Go figure out the problems, refine the process so that, the early majority can follow along and incorporate on that. And so we're dealing with some of those folks, and we have to say, like, while you want to go with heat pump because of their limitations, it makes sense to keep your existing boiler, right? But instead of running for 2,000 hours a season, it's going to run for 200 hours a season. And the other 90% of your heating hours are going to be handled by this heat pump that runs off the electric and this and that. And now I've got the efficiency. I can feel good that I've taken a step towards electrification, but at the end of the day, I got to make sure that building stays warm to take care of the people there, to maintain the structure of the building, to make sure pipes don't freeze and all the rest of that stuff. And all it means is not getting rid of the boiler that's done that job for 40 years. Let's keep it around a little while longer. But it's like it's on reserve, right? When the new kid can't handle it anymore, the experienced veteran's going to come in and go, let me heat this building up, and let me, that's when it's most efficient. So, yeah. Now micro
So
combined heat.
you're not buying a new boiler. I guess that's
You're not.
the thing.
Yeah, no, you're
So
not buying a new boiler.
That's so you have the existing, it's old, you're thinking, all right, I gotta spend 20, 40, 60, whatever $1,000 to change this thing out. Now I don't have to. I'm gonna spend that on the heat pump system, which should also be correct me if I'm wrong, but that could be individualized per the unit too.
So those are your VRF system, variable refrigerant flow. So it's like a manifold system for air conditioning or heat pump units. And again, at its core, a heat pump is simply an air conditioner that can reverse itself.
Yep.
So air conditioner absorbs heat from your house in the summer and kicks it outside. A heat pump absorbs heat from outside air and kicks it off into your house, right? And so a VRF system and some of them can actually absorb heat from one part of the building and discharge it in another part of the building. So like the Willis Tower. Yeah.
I still say Sears.
Yeah, Sears Tower. They'll have a heating demand on one side of the building and that cooling demand on the other side of the building. And so they make use of that where they're going, well, let's absorb the heat from where it's hot and dump it to where it's cold. And that's sometimes front back, right? And so we're starting to see, and I'm larger commercial multifamily buildings, they're incorporating VRF systems all over the place. Heating, cooling, and we have kind of a centralized source of, we're managing that manifold with smaller residential homes. Mitsubishi's got technologies like that. They're not.
Those are like the splits, right?
Yeah. I mean, so you can have one unit outside and you could have 4 blower heads inside. And I know in other countries, you can tie that in with your water heater.
Yeah.
So your air conditioner could absorb heat from the bedroom, right, and effectively put that heat in your water tank downstairs. You can't get that equipment here just yet. But that's kind of where it's going.
They're doing that in Turkey. I saw that this summer.
Oh, is he? So the guy with new hair.
Yeah.
All right. So, what are some of our listeners are like on board with this and they're intrigued? What are some of the things they need to know about if they want to go electric with a heat pump and instead of doing new gas forced air in each individual unit? Like, I'm assuming the electric needs to be upgraded because it's more power there. Like, what else do they need to be aware of?
Again, I'll keep saying it. Like if you want the best way to ensure that you can easily incorporate heat pump technologies in your building is improve the building enclosure, right? And now in some cases, in brick buildings, sometimes actually replacing the windows is the most cost-effective thing you can do, right? I generally don't put windows high on the list. It's just they're expensive and it takes a long time, usually longer than the life of the window, for them to pay for themselves in energy savings. Now, the window is there for daylight and egress and ventilation, and it's got to manage everything a wall does. So they're understandably expensive items. But if you need to save money, you're probably not.
Yeah, the cost of window is so high.
Yeah,
it's hard to agree.
You're better off putting plastic over it for a $10 solution, or you're putting in like a secondary window, a storm window exterior, or an interior window, a secondary window, a couple $100. Replacements are going to be $1,000 a window ish. But on a multifamily building that's brick, finished inside, fully occupied, and they go, how do I reduce the energy loss in my building enclosure without wrapping the exterior in some type of foam, stucco, like an ephes that they do on commercial properties, right? You see the foam board and stucco. They can do that to a brick building, but if you got,
I don't want to get rid of my beautiful brick, man. That.
Exactly. There's a lot of architectural elements. Usually the sides and back are no problem, but the front, nobody wants to mess with the front. But if you still got single pane wood windows from that are 90 years old
with the pulleys,
yeah, the pulleys. I mean, we came across a building that were all painted open, so the top sash was pulled down a half an inch and painted over and over and over. Like you literally need like a saw to cut the window loose just to get it to close. So effectively, the entire building has open windows. Right. And so what could we do to improve the performance? And that was that 2 million BTU steam boiler. And I'm like, you got no business, trying to swap this boiler out, right? You need to get this building enclosure, improved so you can buy a piece of equipment that's more reasonably sized that could do that, right? But right now, you just got this big leaky brick box, right? And we need to improve that because,
You guys mentioned storm windows, and I
Mhm.
think we grew up on the tail end of those. Why'd those go away? Did those serve the purpose that you're mentioning here as far as
Anytime you can put another layer of stuff between you and outside, you're going to do yourself a favor.
but those went away. You don't see them anymore. Like, is that
They were just, I think people found them unsightly and
They
stuff
are.
would get in between.
Yeah, dirty.
And I mean, they're perfectly effective, right? They detract from the nice windows because now you're seeing the storm window, not the interior window. And in some homes that was a deal. In other homes, like the interior windows weren't great anyway. But we have homeowners that have these beautiful old wood windows, and they're like, I don't want to get rid of them. And they actually have high performance exterior windows. So you can call them storm windows, but they're like double pane glass, operable windows. And I'm like, that becomes your new performance window between inside and outside. And your pretty wood windows that are beautiful. I mean,
more decorative? Than,
yeah, there are now window treatments. They're like plantation, shutters or whatever. That's your window treatment to the interior. But you're basically saying, hey, window, thanks for 80 years of service. I'm glad we took care of you, but now you are an architectural detail to the interior. You are not in charge of keeping outside out and inside in, right? The new, high performance exterior window does that now, and it's just a jacked up storm window.
As both an investor and a tradesman and
Mhm.
inspector and all the knowledge, a scientist, you have cities like Evanston that are coming in and trying to say zero car by 2050, whatever. How practical is that for real estate and investing in general?
Well, they can make whatever rules they want for new construction, and if somebody says like, can I make a house all electric? I'm like, if you're building it from scratch, yeah, without a whole lot of to do. I mean, literally, you just get a design team that's on board, and it's technically possible with minimal additional costs. You're simply saying, I'm going to pay for this and not that, right? It's going to cost a little bit more, but we're talking like inside of 10%, right? It's not going to be 20% more. It's going to be 7%, maybe.
Well, without incentives and stuff.
But that's new construction, and that makes
That's new
complete sense to me. Even
yeah.
like the city now, I
Yep.
know new construction, like there's no more gas
Oh, that's
stove.
yeah.
If they, I don't know how they would compel existing homes to
That
change
gets
their
expensive,
systems.
right? Like you have
How do you compel?
Without incentives.
I mean, yeah, you can incentivize it, sure. And I would be up for incentives. I like incentives. Here's a carrot. You want a piece of the carrot? Great. But if you don't care for it, then we can't compel you to make those changes. So I don't know how they would practically do that. We've seen challenges with some municipalities that are very passionate about making these changes, and I think overall it'd be beneficial if buildings did that. I think compulsion is impractical. I mean, we've evaluated homes, single family homes in this case, where they had single pane wood windows, and they're like, these things stink. They're cold. They get the condensation on them. We have to keep managing the moisture to keep them, and they had the worst time trying to get a variance to replace the windows because, they were considered historically significant. I'm like, so basically you've tied somebody's hands. They cannot change their windows. They still have to pay the utilities. They have to suffer the moisture and comfort issues that these single pane windows. I mean, it's a component within a building that has a service life. And when the service life is passed, you got to give the people the ability to upgrade it to a newer technology. Now, if you want to say it should blend in with the building. So don't take like, a vinyl replacement window and plop it in over here where there was, something else. And so you have like the historical societies in these areas that are like, when I walk my dog and I see this and I can't look at something different, I'm like, well, if you're helping me pay the bills, maybe you get a say. But if I own the place and pay taxes on the place and pay the utilities on the place, I should have the ability to upgrade my home. You want to put some parameters on that, like it's still got to look kind of, a period, appropriate to the period of the house. Fine, but dude, let me put some new windows in this place. And people literally had, were told you cannot replace the windows in your house. I'm like, okay, do you care about energy efficiency, or do you want to cast this town in amber as if like this is how I remember it from when I was a little girl? Like, that's great, but things move on and we want to be more efficient, more comfortable. You got to let me change some stuff for the better. So there's that push and pull on how do you compel existing properties to transition over without doing the changes to the building enclosure that make those high efficiency heating cooling systems practical. The two have to play off of each other. They play off each other. And you can't just change one thing while the other thing is just a wreck or an antiquated element that needs to be upgraded, right? The home is a system of systems that interact, right? And if I poke at one thing or change one thing, I've got to look at what are the ramifications of that. And generally, when we're improving a house, we need to kind of bring everything along at the same time. I can't just improve the heating system and forget the enclosure. I can't do the enclosure and forget the heating system, right? I have to do those in concert. I appreciate when people feel strongly about energy efficiency. I'm like, but physics, man. Physics. We can't ignore physics. You ignore physics, it'll kick you square in the freaking teeth. Every time. It will not be ignored. Doesn't care if you believe in it. It rules, right? And so I generally have to, tell people the news that they don't want to hear, which is physics. There's the physical realities that we're dealing with. If you do this, here's what's going to happen, right? And if they go, I'm going to do that anyway, you go, all right, well then if we talk again, you'll probably hear me say, I told you so. So,
you got the old lady voice down. So let me start with that. But really, you kind of answered it here, but I almost want you to go back and maybe summarize and bullet point it, because you get the question all the time. I get the question all the time. Maybe properties you're buying, you have a 6, 12, 18 unit building and it's boiler, and landlords always just think, investors always just think like, oh man, if I can move that heating bill over to them, like that's always the lure of the individual HVAC. You could add AC and all that stuff. Like, give me kind of the 2 or 3 checklists as you're trying to make the decision. That's not monetary. That's really where investors kind of get held up at, the monetary number, which is more expensive short term versus long term. But you guys kind of talked about some other things that they should be considering in that decision.
So the question is to transition from central heating to individual?
Go from boiler to individual.
Obviously, if you can take that operating cost off of your books and pass it on to somebody else. I mean, we did that with one of my brother's buildings, took central boilers and made central forced air units so that we could add air conditioning that didn't involve a sleeve unit or a window unit.
Yeah.
Right. So from that aspect, it kind of makes sense because you can't really do that with a central system in most buildings, especially like a 3 or 4 unit. It does make better sense to do individual heating, cooling. So heat pumps kind of lend themselves to that because I can put one of those blower units, like a mini split blower unit, and that can deliver heat, that can deliver cool air in the summertime. And so if you've got a building where it's a central boiler and then window air conditioners or sleeve units, switching over to heat pump forced air units allows you to kind of, again, push off your utility cost onto the tenants.
Because that's all electric, right?
Well,
Yeah.
The issue there's I think a couple complications here. One, vacant building, I do it all day long, right? Like if you're gutting the building, it's nice and easy. You can lay it out.
Yeah, you can run all the utilities or all the
Figure out where you want your
infrastructure.
ductwork and where what closet am I going to put this in?
I can
Like,
gang my drains together, run my electrical. Yeah,
stack it.
it's typically fairly invasive.
yes, that's like a no brainer to me to pony up and do the money. It's when you buy a 6 unit, 8 unit, whatever, and you have tenants there, and it's like. It might look good on a spreadsheet to be like, oh, we're going to spend $12,000 a unit or whatever to get this $10,000 cost off. The value of my building goes up by whatever over the cap rate. It makes a ton of sense. But like you have people there. Like it's almost not
Logistically.
Logistically, I don't want to say impossible, but it's like it highly deters you.
It is.
To be like, all right, let's just deal with what we have going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's usually where you're looking at. That's the dividing line. Can I get this building empty enough to do this invasive capital investment, and this changeover, or not, right? And so it doesn't need to be completely empty. You can phase it in, right? You can do east side, west side. moves somebody over from the east side into the west side apartments. Some people move out, right? And you go, okay, we've got this stack, that's empty, so we can do a renovation to, the O3 apartments, first floor, second floor, third floor, right? So you can do it a stack at a time. You know what? It's so individual, because you get some building owners that are just go, you know what? I don't have the mental, capacity to even like deal with that problem. It's easier for me to just keep it the way it is on the books, and the numbers are what they are, right? And then you have other folks that are more motivated to figure out a way to make it happen. And we can obviously consult with them and go, here's a more practical way how you could do this transition in a phased manner. If gutting the place, is not an option.
Yeah. And I think the other thing people miss on that too is you have your hot water tank. Let's say that's centralized too. You're still going to have a gas bill unless you're finding enough room to put individualized, like a closet space to individualize HVAC and hot water tanks for each unit.
That's what we did with my brother's place. So it was, you still had a central gas meter because we still had central hot water.
Yes.
Right? Because, you can put a hot water heater in everybody's apartment, less likely. Right? So we had still
if you're gutting it, yeah, right. Like if you have the room, but
so we were doing a renovation. So we did individual forced air gas with integrated with the air conditioning, in each unit. But then we had to get 6 gas meters, installed in each to each building, in addition to the central meter, because we had to keep the central meter, and then we had to have 6 other units, and gas stoves, gas furnace.
Your plumber has to do all the piping to get it there, and all the fittings.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, transitioning that. Now, again, this was a gas to gas, central gas to individual gas, transition. Heat pumps weren't an option back in the day, right? Now you could probably do that same thing and do it all electric, which is generally less invasive. It's a little bit less invasive to run electrical systems through the house or upgrade the electrical than have to run gas. In New York, other very congested, high-rise, multi-unit high-rise residential, they are taking off sometimes a layer of exterior brick. So say your exterior brick all needs to be tuck pointed. And you're like, that's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars to tuck point that brick. And so what they do is refinance the building, or refinance the building or otherwise finance the cost of just peel off that bad brick. That gives me 5 inches of space now. And so now on the exterior, you just shrank the building up by 5.5 inches all the way around, or something like that, 4.5, 5 inches. And then what they do is they do, it's called panelized construction. So they are effectively putting a panelized exterior koozie around this beer can of a building, right? New windows, new cladding, and sometimes in that space between the structure brick and the new cladding that they're putting on, they'll run electrical for the induction stoves. They'll run ventilation systems in there. So that's the one thing as you improve the building enclosures and make things tighter, you have to incorporate some mechanical fresh air exchange, right? So in some of these new construction buildings, they call them the magic box. It's a forced air unit that does heating, cooling, dehumidification, humidification, and ventilation all in one box, right? And so you have a couple penetrations to the exterior to expel stale air and bring in fresh air. But everything else is basically a heat pump inside there. So you have to discharge heat from the heat pump, kick it outside. You want to bring in some more heat, you can bring in from outside. And so if you're building new or you're doing a gut rehab and you want to have everybody have their own utility bill, that's those pieces of equipment can facilitate that. So now everybody's kind of got their own, heating, ventilation, AC, dehumidification, all in one box. And what makes that possible is the improvement of the building enclosure, right? And so they're working the support infrastructure in with the new insulated, airtight building enclosure. It incorporates windows, so they're putting in like a new exterior window that we talked. So the old window inside just kind of stays there, and at some point when it makes sense, they'll fall back, go into the interior of the units and trim those windows out, tie the old into the new. But it's not critical because you already have the weather-tight window to the exterior. So that's less invasive. So they're not going into individual units. A lot of that work is happening on the exterior. And when those units can turn over, then they can, do the interior work. So there's, on a case-by-case basis, there are so many different options available for a property owner to make those changes that they want to make, whatever their motivation is, whether it's to transition to electric or to, say, hey, I really want, homeowners to deal with their own utility bills. If they want to be wasteful and open up windows, that's on them. If they want to be frugal and, then they get to benefit from that. I just, I want that to be on their side of the ledger, not ours anymore.
I do not see that last option in my career ever.
What?
That last option, I do not see me ever doing that with a building.
Yep.
Analyze.
Let's talk about, you mentioned solar earlier. So let's talk about some alternative energy.
Mhm.
We'll start monetary. Are there opportunities right now where solar, besides like, hey, I believe in this and I want a carbon footprint, are there opportunities with either rebates or whatever where solar is, hey, this actually makes sense for my building and for my investors in the building? Or is it still more experimental now and it's for the person who really, for lack of better words, cares?
Yeah, there's incentive funds, again, through the utilities. They generally get funded a year-to-year basis. You have to put in an application, and the funds don't last to the end of the year, right?
People are using them.
Yeah, people are using them. And so you kind of have to get in line, and hopefully your proposal is acceptable and, your application's, accepted and you can get that project financed. Obviously, if there's a low income element to that, then there's going to be they're going to prioritize those projects. So there are those opportunities out there with the federal tax incentives, kind of sunsetting. There was a big push at the end of last year to kind of get projects up and rolling, because they had to be started before the end of the year in many cases. But things have kind of, they're less active right now. So again, the true believers are still going for it. The folks that are doing it, cost benefit analysis, they're kind of pumping the brakes on that now and going, all right, if we get accepted, maybe we'll go for it. If we don't, we might have to refocus, our efforts.
Got it.
Or
Do you
just kinda
see
set it
that
aside.
changing? Do you see, whether it be new administration or whatever, do you see solar being bigger in the future? Do you think, we've tried and this thing's just not going to pencil on a large scale?
We're our market is our utility costs are relatively low, and so that makes it harder to justify, right? Putting in alternative infrastructure, to capture, generate your own electricity. It again, many cases make sense. California, where utility costs are much, electricity costs specifically are higher. Obviously, it makes it easier to justify going, oh, I'll just generate my own freaking power and store it in a battery. And, if I have to deal with the grid, I'm either selling to the grid or I'm buying off peak. We're kind of spoiled around here. Our gas costs are not the highest. Our electric costs are not the highest. And so it's harder to say, it totally makes sense to do this, that, or the other, right? We're looking at stuff on a case-by-case basis. When people say solar panels, there's the photovoltaics that catch or make electricity, and then there's a solar thermal that is hot water, right? And so if you have a big hot water load, right, it might make sense to do solar thermal to at least preheat the water, and then your gas or whatever boiler system is can basically finish it off, right? And so those can still make sense. We see them on car washes all the time. Car washes have huge hot water demand, and so solar thermal panels can help offset that hot water demand. If you have a hydronic building, you've got a lot of centralized hot water that the building's responsible for delivering. Solar thermal can help with that. Heat pump technology has come up a long way, and so in some cases, it's almost cheaper to just have the heat pumps do that rather than the solar thermal. So those numbers where there was a clear, a delineation about when this was beneficial over that. Now those two have kind of come together. So for residential buildings, it might not make sense to switch over to solar or incorporate solar thermal. You just kind of go, you know what, I can run the electricity easier through the building. So let's just do photovoltaics, and then I can feed a battery or I can feed a heat pump, or that's that's an interesting aspect of the power. Obviously, the building has to have utilities there to maintain the health and well-being of the people in the structure. Um, we had to deal with this recently where we had a power outage, and I remember my tenants going, "Hey, are you going to bring a backup generator here?" And I'm like, he was like, "When the village gets the power back on, we'll all have power. Like, my house is out, right? Right? You think I'm pulling out a generator here because your fridge freezer is starting to get a little soft? Keep the doors closed, man, or start cooking some stuff up, right? But I'm in the same pinch that you are." But it made me think. I'm like, it might not be a bad idea for the building to have some type of backup power, at least to keep fridges and stuff going. And so, is that going to be a battery? Is that going to be micro combined heat and power, where your heating unit can create some, can generate electricity when the grid is down? Not if, when the power goes out, happens once or twice or whatever, in your area, to be able to. It'd be great to have. I think there's a good argument to say, let's look at resilience as much as we're looking at efficiency, right? So because how hard of a hit can we afford to take? If the power goes out, some pumps go out, heating systems go out, so not just the discomfort of the people and inconvenience of the people living there, but there's also the operation and maintenance, management of that building. Without power, things can get really messy real fast, right? Mm-hmm. And so to have a system where like, hey, shoot, the grid's down, but like now my boiler kicks over and kicks into electricity generation mode so that we can have our backup systems kick in, right? And then when the grid comes back and can shift back over to, hot water production, those micro combined heat and power units are really, really attractive. I've got an older boiler in that place. And so I'm scratching my head going, what I want to do, the water heater's not going to last forever. The boiler's not going to last forever. What's the replacement system going to look like? I don't have to change it right now, but that's one of the things that I've been kind of thinking in my own mind. And I'm sure every property owner looks at that and goes, all right, what's the timeline on this? Am I looking at a 15-year window before I got to make a decision? Or is it a 5-year window? And who knows? You better think of it sooner than later, because sometimes the equipment surprises you, and it throws in the towel before you're ready for it. So everybody ought to think about what that next system's going to look like, because that decision window might get shortened up on you real quick, right? So you at least want to think about it a little. But yeah, again, the bottom line is there's a lot of technical options out there, and so we want to look at the technical options and then just kind of what is the individual motivations or goals for the property owner.
Yep,
considering the building you have.
Cool. All right, so you spent a lot of time as an inspector. Before we let you go, you got to give us one or two funny or crazy things you've seen on inspections, because I'm sure you've seen it all. So give us something that'll make the listener go, whoa.
The raccoons in the attic are always fun. It's like having a dog up there, a troublesome dog that likes to chew on things and defecate inside. You go in there, you're like, freaking Great Dane up here? What's going on? So we've seen some foul stuff up in the attic, and homeowners don't go up in attics. They just very rarely do. So you see that kind of stuff. I'm always suspicious of the flip houses, because it makes us nervous, because generally the face of everything looks great.
Yeah,
right.
Cosmetic rehab and left.
Yeah,
everything
but then you're like,
walls.
but I can't see behind walls, and I can't see the future. And so when something sticking out on a rehab is wrong, you're like, it's like the tip of the iceberg kind of thing. Like, I see this one thing. If the thing I can see is that jacked up, the stuff I can't see has got to be worse. It's sure not going to be better, right? If they allowed me to see this part of it. So flip jobs are make us all a little bit nervous, because you're like, there's stuff to be found, but not everything is discoverable, right? There's just stuff that's behind finishes. I'm not going to be able to see it, all right? But home buyers are expecting you to see through surfaces and predict the future. I'm like, sorry, X-ray vision doesn't work. Crystal ball's cracked, Real
quick, sorry to cut you off, but on that note, like, we have started taking pictures of when we do our drain tile, when we insulate everything, like when the walls are open, because no one's gonna believe you at the end, right? Like they can look at the plans, I guess, if they really want to dig into it. But like we have our proof now of like, hey, here you go. This is what it looks like.
That is a fantastic practice. Absolutely fantastic. Is before insulation and drywall goes up, take a picture of that. Take a video, right? You just walk through, point out stuff, right? And keep that in their records. It's so useful, if you have a frozen pipe or any other kind of issues, you want to prove that you did quality work. All of that stuff. Photos have really kind of saved a lot of our contractors a lot of grief. Where homeowners are like, I don't believe you did that. And you're like, here's a picture. And you're like, oh, all right, who else going to be mad at?
Yeah.
But you instantly off the hook. And nobody regrets having photos of stuff that's going on in the wall. So keep that up. So as home inspectors, I'm always suspicious, like when the carpet cleaning guy leaves just before I show up, or somebody's leaving with a paint pan, and you're like, and then, so infrared cameras are a fun tool because you go in there and you can see, like, I find wet carpet. So seepage on a rainy day, right? You can walk the middle of the carpet, everything seems fine, but infrared cameras telling me like, oh, there's something creeping in underneath the baseboards over there. So even before stains are shown, maybe things got painted over, you can see paint drying with an infrared camera until it's dry, right? So it might not be wet to the touch, but it's evaporating, it's curing, and you can actually see that with the infrared camera clear as day.
Interesting.
And so then you look around the backside of the driveway, you're like, oh, there's mold over here, which means they're probably painting over it on this side. So yeah, that's the closest we can get to seeing through walls is an infrared camera, but it doesn't see through walls. It tells us a lot of stuff. But yeah, the pest issues, we got a lot of pest issues in houses, just, mold and pest issues. Those are the things that just really kind of deter people. And it's a shame when it happens because it's, sometimes you don't know about it. For homeowners, it's kind of hidden defects kind of a thing. You don't know that mice are dancing around your rim joists and, living in your insulation until, an inspector goes poking around and be like, hey, what's this? And mice come falling out of the insulation. Like,
Yeah. But you open the attic hatch and just like the mouse poop just falls down.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sweet.
Yeah. Had that moving ceiling tiles in people's basements. Like I want to check out, something along the rim joist, like where the air conditioner line set goes out. And so I'll move that ceiling tile just to kind of, because if mice are in and out of the house, where are the penetrations? All right, let me move a ceiling tile at one of those penetrations. And don't look up. Like I move ceiling tiles. I'm like, it's right above my head. So stuff will rain around me, but it won't hit my face. It happened too many times.
So, all right, so you good to wrap?
Good to wrap.
Let's do it.
All right, what's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this in this corner of real estate while others wish they could?
When I learned about building science and got BPI certified, one of the big aspects of that is combustion safety testing, right? If I'm going to make your house tighter, I want to make sure that we're not trapping gas leaks, we're not creating any other kind of issues. And I want to make sure that your gas appliances can vent their exhaust properly. And in a tight house, if I turn on a big exhaust fan, something can pull the exhaust off your water heater back into the house. This was new to me. And I talked to my other HVAC guys that I knew, and they're like, you're doing what? What kind of test? Right? And I'm surprised at how unknown it has been and still is, in large part. And as a property owner, you've got an obligation to make sure it's safe. As a homeowner, you have an obligation to, to yourself. I mean, you want to make sure that nobody's getting sick in the place. So, I guess I saw that as an important aspect of evaluating buildings and something that should be taken into consideration as we improve buildings. So much so that we actually, got into the training business for that. And so we're, helping those guys. That's why the utilities require that. And so I think my competitive advantage is understanding what makes a big difference in the performance of ongoing performance of buildings. I like keeping buildings going, right? Let's not just tear them down and build something new. Let's make give this building a relevant life for the next 100 years. How do I explain that to people, right? So that's it. I mean, the big competitive advantage is appreciating the importance of these aspects and being able to explain it to folks in a way that they understand, even if they're not technically, experienced or knowledgeable. I can explain it to them in a way that they go, oh, okay, now I know. I don't know how it's done, but I know why it's important.
What is the one piece of advice you would tell someone that is yet to buy their first property here in Chicago?
Make sure you have a home inspection.
Perfect.
And a sewer scope.
What do you do for fun?
Bike ride. Winter, summer, rain, sleet. Not when it's icy, but I bike ride.
All right.
And when it's like 0 out and your lungs are about to burst, you're still out there?
Yeah, well, the furnace is kicking, man. So you don't get cold if the furnace is kicking. But yeah, no, I'm mountain biking
All right.
all season.
Good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners?
One or the other. I started out with Tim Ferriss' podcast and got into modern wisdom. As far as books, I think for business owners, the E-Myth is a great first start. Ready, Fire, Aim is another really good one. Read, and follow up on other good, if there's somebody whose advice you appreciate, just follow up on their recommendations because they got there that way.
We're big fans of Modern Wisdom. We saw him in person when he came to Chicago
Oh, fantastic.
a few months ago. So
You got me E-Myth like 4 or 5 years ago. That was a good one.
yeah.
Dude, that's a book you cannot read early enough if you're going to start your own business.
Yes.
Can't read it early enough.
Be the owner, not the doer.
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff needs to get done. And if you're wondering who's doing it, it's probably you. So,
Other than yourself, name a valuable resource for Chicago real estate investors.
other than me, Chicago real estate investor, you guys, I'm not, I help people with their buildings. Mine is less on the financial side of things. I mean, obviously the numbers all have to work out for whatever we're doing. But that's not my strength. My strength is making sure buildings work well or better. I'd be looking at guys like you to, for investment advice and tips and tricks. So keep it up because again, not everybody's got their strengths. That's yours.
Awesome. Appreciate it. We'll take it. All right, Joe, thank you so much. You provide a ton of value to our listeners. How can they learn more about you? Is there any way they can provide value to you?
They can come check us out at Insight Property Services or insightpsinc.com. And how can they bring services? They can let us know that if somebody's griping about icicles or ice dams or cold rooms, where you know what, here's another glass of wine. I'm tired of hearing you complain about it. Give Insight a call. They'll help you figure it out. I don't want to hear your grief anymore. So just have them give us a call, and we'll give them some insight in their property.
All right, it's a good deal. We'll link to all that in the show notes. We end with our Chicago fact. Mark, who are we playing for? Who's our sponsor?
All right, we're playing for Mary Stein. And Mary, if myself or Joe gets this question right today, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by today's sponsor, Bebeck Das from Das Law.
All right, very good. All right, I was in Lincoln Park the other day, and I actually went by this building, 1932 North Burlington. It's a huge mansion. It's awesome. It's just south of Armitage and Halstead. Or it's south of Oz Park there near Armitage and Halstead. This mansion was built in 2010. A couple of years ago, it sold for $15.25 million. I'm going to give you 4 facts about this building that I looked up. 3 are true, 1 is not. You got to give me the one that is not true.
Okay.
All right. The entry door is over 1,000 pounds. The sellers in 2023 originally bought it for $12 million and put $65 million into it, and then only sold it for $15 million, which is a very bad investment. The original asking price was $50 million. It's on 18 city lots. Which one of these is false?
I'm going with the original listing price was not $50 million. You can pick. We're on the same team, so you pick one that's not that one.
I'm going to go with how much they invested in the property, the $65 million.
Those are both true.
Come on.
It's they bought it for 12, put 65 into it, and only sold it for 15.
Who is this? Is it the Priskers?
No, I don't know. It's look it up online. 1932 North Burlington. You don't know the purchaser, but they have the seller's information there.
Gotcha.
It is not the answer is it's not 18 city lots. It's only 8.
Oh, that 18 made sense though to me. I guess like that didn't seem like a lot.
I don't know. That in the middle of Lincoln Park, that feels like a lot.
8's a lot.
A lot.
18
Yeah.
is
18's like
yeah.
like university stuff.
I was thinking 9 back to back, but I know that block, and that's not the case. So I should have thought about that.
So.
Oh man! All right. So Mary Stein, I apologize. We'll put your name back in the hat.
Huh.
Joe and myself failed to get you a $50 gift card brought to you by today's sponsor,
Just saving our sponsors' money.
Bebeck Das Law. So, yep. Joe, thanks for coming on. Tom, thank you. Listeners, real estate is a team sport. Go to straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Check out Build Your Team. We have the 2026 team on there. It's everyone that Tom and I have worked with personally, and we would recommend to you if you called us up tomorrow. So check it out, straightupchicagoinvestor.com. Joe, thank you. Tom, thank you. Listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.